Working with President Donald Trump is the worst, especially if you're actually trying to teach him facts, which is why members of Trump's coronavirus task force have essentially had it and have basically started ignoring him and stopped trying. Now, this is according to a report in the Daily Beast. They said the task force has tried to present a united front with the president in the early stages of the COVID-19 outbreak, but they have largely stopped correcting his misinformation on the record and even pushing back behind the scenes. Basically, they're tired of dealing with the man baby. One senior official who works with the task force says, quote, "It is a pain in the ass sometimes, for sure. There isn't much more some of us can do in that except continue making sound policy recommendations and hope they sink in. Sometimes the president backs off on some things, sometimes he doesn't. It's his call." This is coming from the adults in the room. Yes, there are still adults in the room that have to deal with this. They've got to deal with little Donnie, right? Who Donnie doesn't care about saving human lives. He's a sociopath. And what he does is that he goes with whatever suits his recommendations and his feelings at the moment, right? Or I'm sorry, not his recommendations, but his motivations, right? And that's what his recommendations are based off of. And so, what is this? I mean, what's it all about for Donald Trump? Well, it's about winning. Of course, it's always been about winning. How's this going to impact me? What's going to happen with me? Am I going to win re-election? Am I going to make money? That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what dealing with Trump ultimately boils down to is, okay, here you have this policy recommendation, shelter in place. And Donald Trump says, well, if people shelter in place, how's that going to affect the economy, which affects my re-election chances? How are people going to spend money at Trump Resort at Mar-a-Lago? How's that going to affect me? And so that's what you have to have in mind when you work with Trump, when you give him any sort of recommendation on policy. It doesn't matter about the facts. It doesn't matter about the science. No, it only matters how does it affect the baby. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what it's always been about. And so right now, Trump is more focused on winning in the short term. Then, of course, what will obviously happen if we go that route, which would be him losing in the long term, as well as America losing in the long term. Now, governors have noticed this, right? Especially, Democratic governors, obviously, but there's some right-wing governors as well. And so they've noticed this small but loud group of protesters that have popped up. Now, these protesters, of course, have been funded by mainly right-wing Trump donors. And those donors, of course, are people like Betsy DeVos and Charles Koch. And so these right-wing conservative groups, well, they, put up people who are economically affected by this. And I mean that by not by saying the regular workers who, yes, are economically affected. They are afraid. But then again, you have the majority of the American people, American workers, who are saying we should have these lockdown orders in place until the virus is, of course, contained, until we have those aggressive testing, and even if it harms the economy. 81% of Americans agree with what the Democratic governors generally are doing. And some Republican governors like Larry Hogan are also doing, which is being very cautious and saying we're going to stay locked down until we have this virus under control, until the medical professionals are saying that we are clear. Okay. And so Donald Trump doesn't like that. These conservative billionaires who weigh their stock portfolios more heavily than they weigh people's lives are saying, no, let's get the country back to work. I don't care how many people are sacrificed. I must make more money. And that's it. That's what it's about. And so what's interesting is that you have this dichotomy, right? And this is Donald Trump trying to have it both ways. You have Trump listening to his advisors from the coronavirus task force, right? And releasing an actually pretty good plan. It is a good 3-tiered plan on how to reopen the economy. And those 3 tiers, basically what you have to have is aggressive testing, which a lot of states don't have right now. And you have to have a significant fall off in new coronavirus cases reported in your states. You have to have flattened the curve. And so those are the criterion under this administration plan to start opening up the economy in these states. So that's a very good plan. It was released again by the Trump administration last week, and I agree with it. And it's because it's backed by science, it's backed by facts, it's backed by experts, right? So on the one hand, you have that. And on the other hand, you have Donald Trump taking to Twitter to say things like, liberate Michigan, liberate Pennsylvania, liberate Maryland, the Second Amendment in Virginia. So wait, you're going to do one hand, this ridiculous nonsense, and on the other hand, something that's smart. And again, it's because he's trying to have it both ways, because all he's doing is looking at how does Donald Trump benefit? How does Donald Trump get reelected? In fact, Ned Lamont, this is a Connecticut governor, right? He says he's Democrat. He says, quote, "It's bipolar down there. We had a good constructive meeting with the vice president's commission, but then you hear the press conference of the president. You sometimes feel like the governors are being used as a campaign prop." Sometimes. Dude, I got bad news for you, Ned. You are totally being used as a prop. And of course, it's Republican governors and Trump versus Democratic governors. Notice how these protests that are, astroturfed by these big donors are only popping up in states with Democratic governors. Whereas Republican governors have also done similar lockdowns, but no protests or very limited protests. Weird. Oh, that's weird how that. No, it's not weird. It's on purpose. There's a point to this, and it is all political. Oh, look at the Democrat governors. Oh, look at how they're locking people down. Look at how bad they're hurting the economy. I can't believe they would do something like that. It's all political. It's all political. And by the way, Trump does this thing where he A/B tests the audience too, right? And he basically says two different things, often in the same sentence, right? Takes two different viewpoints and then tries to see what people want to hear, and then he'll go with that, right? And so, look, that's what he does. He makes sure to have his cake and eat it too, and have, the both ways. And look, a lot of people want to get back to normal. We do, right? People want to hear that they want to get back, or that they're able to get back to normal sooner, obviously, because nobody likes being stuck in lockdown, that we can get back to work, that we can go back to taking care of our families, visiting loved ones, going back out to eat, and watching movies in the theater. We all want to go back to that, right? But we can't, because right now it's dangerous. And Democratic governors are saying right now we just don't have the testing, we don't have the supplies, we don't have the infrastructure. We've got hot spots popping up in a lot of these different places, in our cities, and so we're not ready to lift this lockdown. Whereas you have places like Texas and Florida and Georgia that are saying, nope, don't care, even though we continue to have a rise. And yes, it has slowed a little bit, but cases continue to rise where more people are getting COVID-19 and we're still having more deaths. Don't care. We're going to open it up. I mean, we're going to do it, quote unquote, responsibly, but we're going to open up gyms and bowling alleys and hairstylists. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? It is ridiculous. And of course, Brian Kemp announced his state will ease social distancing restrictions this week. Texas also this week. Florida has opened up their beaches. The beaches. And look, here's the thing. We have people that haven't been following social distancing guidelines at all. And a lot of the protests, for example, very, very small protests, usually a couple of hundred people, but those people are not practicing social distancing. A lot of them are not wearing masks. And there are some, like the ones that happened in Austin just recently over the weekend. You had people out there like Alex Jones saying, nah, you know what, this COVID-19 thing, total hoax, Not real. So I'm going to go and shake hands with people, and he actually did. Well, that's how you get that's how you get the coronas, man. You want corona? That's how you get the coronas. Just ask Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the UK. That's how he got it, because he was saying the exact same things. So look, in America, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and these Republican governors are making sure that it gets worse, that it gets worse faster, basically. So one more thing, right? So now we go to the politics of the situation, right? Trump's political advisors recognize the risk posed to his reelection if states are reopened too soon and another outbreak explodes. However, Trump thinks that he can bluff his way through all of that. Two sources told the Daily Beast that the president has recently been riffing that he has the best people and the tremendous team. I have a tremendous team. I got the best people. Nobody knows viruses like I do. He actually said that, right? And that's when he said, at about the same time, where he said, I probably should have been a doctor. I would have been a tremendous doctor. And that's what I should have done instead of going to politics. Oh my God. Oh my God. No, this guy's an idiot. He is absolutely unhinged. He does not have maybe he does have some of the at least better people. I mean, you look at Anthony Fauci, and he's actually doing a pretty good job. And there are adults, as you can see, on the coronavirus task force that are saying, we're not ready for this. We're not ready for this. But even they hit their breaking point. And they can no longer say that, hey, man, look, we're doing the best that we can. But president's not listening to us. And so I don't know what to do. I'm kind of stuck here. And why even try anymore? Why even try? So now getting back to Trump here, he says that this tremendous team of people who are no longer trying, because Trump's not listening to them, would be able to handle another outbreak in the fall. So already they're expecting another outbreak. They're saying, hey, man, even Trump says, well, it's probably, it's going to come back. So we haven't beaten this at all. But when we do, we're going to crush it. We're going to crush it just like we already crushed it now. What? 40,000 Americans are now dead from coronavirus. It's been a month, right? 40,000 Americans are dead now. We lead the world in infections and deaths from coronavirus now. We're not testing enough people. We should be doing about 3 times as much testing, at least 3 times as much testing, if not more. In fact, we're testing just under 200,000 people a day. Now you might think, 200,000 people a day. Wow, we're doing, that's some aggressive testing. In a country of over 330 million, not so much. In fact, Harvard researchers released a report just recently saying that in order to aggressively get, to have the type of aggressive testing that we need to start reopening the country as soon as possible, we should be testing not, 500,000, 600,000 people a day. No, we should be testing 20 million people a day in order to keep up with the aggressive, reopening of the country that right-wingers want us to do, that we should be doing. 20 million people a day. We're nowhere near that. So, crushing it? Yeah. Oh, he's crushing it all right. Crushing something. Coronavirus has never had a better ally than President Trump, than this moron, this idiot that's in office that knows absolutely nothing. Nothing. This thing is serious. It is incredibly contagious. It's aggressive. And the only way to beat it is to ramp up testing significantly so that we can find the people who are infected, isolate them, and, remove them from the general population, and then practice social distancing for a certain period of time, months, if not for the next year. And then watch, of course, and all that, of course, is to make sure that we don't overload our healthcare system, which we're already doing. Once we do that stuff, once we get to a point where you have no new infections, when you've actually flattened that curve, then we can start to carefully reopen the country. But in order to do that, the first step is to get aggressive testing. And we don't have that, especially in the states that they're trying to open up already. So I understand the frustration of the team. I get it, because it seems to be very clear that Trump is not interested in anything other than short-term gain, which, of course, happens to be his reelection. He's not interested in facts, not interested in doing the right thing in the long term, just the short term. And unfortunately, he's also too stupid to realize that doing the expedient thing, which is opening up the country, right, will just make this virus come back and come back hard. And that all the progress that we've made so far in slowing the rate of infections will come back, will basically be negated in a second wave. And we're going to have to start the whole thing all over again. But this is unfortunately what happens when you have a narcissistic, sociopathic moron in charge of the country. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.